The following podcast by Fusion Family Wealth, LLC, Fusion, is intended for general information purposes only. No portion of the podcast serves as the receipt of or as a substitute for personalized investment advice from Fusion or any other investment professional of your choosing. Please see additional important disclosure at the end of this podcast. A copy of Fusion's current written disclosure brochure discussing our advisory services and fees is available upon request or at www.fusionfamilywealth.com.
Welcome to the Crazy Wealthy Podcast with your host, Jonathan Blau. Whether you're just starting out or are an experienced investor, join Jonathan as he seeks to illuminate and demystify the complexities of making consistently rational financial decisions under conditions of uncertainty. He'll chat with professionals from the advice world, entrepreneurs, executives, and more to share fresh perspectives on making sound decisions that maximize your wealth. And now, here's your host.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for joining us for our third episode of Fusion Fix It Fridays. This is the mini segment of our podcast, Crazy Wealthy Podcast. And today I'm going to talk to you about why money can't buy happiness. Everybody's kind of always heard that. Some people may believe it or not believe it, but I'm going to try and attack that issue from a behavioral perspective. So in general, one of the things that's interesting is when we watch people aspiring to have more wealth or more material objects, when we look, oftentimes when one looks at those people, think, oh, they must be really happy. They have the great big car, the great big house. But what we also see is somebody who has a new BMW aspires to have the new Ferrari and then aspires to have a new Lamborghini and so forth. So the problem is our brain doesn't want the new car or the bigger house. Our brain wants the dopamine rush, that pleasure chemical that's produced in anticipation of getting that new, bigger, whatever it is. And so therefore, we can never satisfy happiness with things and more money because it's the dopamine rush, which is like any other addiction. It just wants more and more. So that's one of the reasons that money can't buy happiness. Another reason is, as the French philosopher from the 1700s, Montesquieu put it, so I think so well, is that if all we wanted was to be happy, that would be easily accomplished. But what we really want is to be happier than other people, which is almost always very difficult because we deem other people to be happier than they actually are. And there's no better manifestation in modern times of what Montesquieu identified in the 1700s than Facebook, the Facebook, what I call reality, right? You go on Facebook and you can wonder, why does everyone just have this great life that I don't have? They go on these great vacations. They're getting these great celebrations for their birthdays and anniversaries. It's because that's all anybody is showing, right? So that's a great example of what I call the immutability of human nature, right? Hundreds of years ago, Montesquieu was talking about the same human nature element of the fact that we measure our happiness and success not in absolute terms, but only in relation to what others have. So I always found that to be very interesting. So if there is no absolute number of dollars or material goods that uniformly can be said to be the number that would make people happy generally, there's also an equation that I like to share that's a good measure of wealth and happiness. And that equation is simple. It just simply looks at what do we have materially, financially, and subtract out what we want. And if that equation doesn't lead to a positive number as the result, then we're not really happy because we keep moving the goalposts. That tends to be something that is a human nature action because of wanting to kind of keep up with the Joneses. And so based on that measure, what we have minus what we want, if that's not a positive number, based on that, I think there are probably many unhappy billionaires. One of the stories I always like that I got from Morgan Housel, who wrote The Psychology of Money and has his own podcast. which is called The Psychology of Money. He talks about the man in the car paradox, and that's where there was a young man who was valet parking cars in California, and he saw someone drive up in a Ferrari. Now he's looking at the person in the Ferrari. We all think that, wow, I must look cool. The guy's looking at me in my Ferrari, but nobody cares more about our things than we do. That young man wasn't looking at the man in the Ferrari saying, look how cool he is. He was looking at the man in the Ferrari saying, how cool would I look if I had that Ferrari? He didn't know or care anything about the man. So if we could kind of internalize that and recognize nobody cares so much about our stuff more than we do, maybe that would quell the need to always move the goalpost a little bit. So I just give that as a little tip. The other thing I like to point out is there's a story of there's this party in Shelter Island that a billionaire hedge fund manager threw, and Kurt Vonnegut was there with Heller, who wrote the book Catch-22, and he says to Joseph Heller, he says, listen, this guy, this hedge fund manager, made more money in a single day than you've made in all of the books that you've sold, all of the Catch-22 books that you sold in your lifetime. So Heller looks at Vonnegut. He said, that may be so, but I have something he'll never have. Vonnegut said, what could you have that this billionaire hedge fund guy could never have? And his answer was so eloquent, Heller. He said in one word, enough. And that one word, he draws all of the ideas I'm trying to get across, right? If we don't have enough, then we'll always be moving the goalposts, and money certainly will never be able to buy us happiness. So what I'll leave you with is what I always tell my the new investors who are interviewing us: always try to walk away from this meeting saying to myself, whoever I see in the world that has a lot more material things and money than me, understand as long as I have one thing that they can never have, which is enough, I'm likely to be much wealthier than they'll ever be. So with that sign off, I thank you for tuning in again. In the meantime, you can listen to these podcasts, Crazy Wealthy in general, and the Fix It segments on crazywealthypodcast.com. You can go to fusionfamilywealth.com, our website, and you can also listen on your favorite venues, everything from Apple to Spotify to iHeartRadio, and all of the popular venues. Thank everybody so much for tuning in, and we look forward to having you join us on the next episode.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Crazy Wealthy Podcast. For more insights, resources, and to sign up for our newsletter, visit crazywealthypodcast.com. Until then, stay crazy wealthy.
The previous podcast by Fusion Family Wealth, LLC, Fusion, was intended for general information purposes only. No portion of the podcast serves as the receipt of or is a substitute for personalized investment advice from Fusion or any other investment professional of your choosing. Different types of investments involve varying degrees of risk, and it should not be assumed that future performance of any specific investment or investment strategy, or any non-investment related or planning services, discussion, or content will be profitable, be suitable for your portfolio or individual situation. Neither Fusion's investment advisor registration status, nor any amount of prior experience or success should be construed that a certain level of results or satisfaction will be achieved if Fusion is engaged or continues to be engaged to provide investment advisory services. Fusion is neither a law firm nor accounting firm, and no portion of its services should be construed as legal or accounting advice. No portion of the video content should be construed by a client or prospective client as a guarantee that he or she will experience a certain level of results if Fusion is engaged or continues to be engaged to provide investment advisory services. A copy of Fusion's current written disclosure brochure discussing our advisory services and fees is available upon request or at www.fusionfamilywealth.com.